Good morning, fellow travelers. Today we're going to talk about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, spiritual bypass. This is a very popular topic these days. I think it's way overdiagnosed and probably overused, but I'm going to cover why it should or shouldn't be and the range of spiritual bypass and types of it. And I gotta say, in 20 years of meditating, I've met a lot of people who have used this term spiritual bypass, and in my opinion, it's mostly been used incorrectly or misunderstood. It's sort of like the new gluten, everyone's got an opinion on it and some sort of, worriedness level about it. But I just want to make sure it's not doing more harm than good. So to begin with, there are two kinds of spiritual bypass. The first one is sort of a more mental belief system one, which is more about, there's a lot of non-dual teachings out there these days. So really holding on to those and using that as a way to live your life, or spiritual positivity or other sort of spiritual belief systems as a way to avoid your human feelings. The other kind, which is much more interesting, which is a sort of energetic spiritual bypass that happens typically only in people that have had a really long-term practice, and typically only a certain type of focus to add to that. So this is more rare, but it's much more interesting. There's a kind of spiritual energy that you get in touch with that may allow you to bypass your human experience. So first we're going to talk about that one, but I want to share that from my experience, I actually came at this from not a spiritual perspective, or at least spirituality wasn't even in my vocabulary at the time. I just wanted to be less dysfunctional. I wanted to be a lighter traveling human and get rid of, heal some childhood wounds and travel lightly. And I didn't know until I had a few awakenings that there was sort of, anytime I would really clear out a mess, that it would actually expose itself to be nothing other than the entire universe flowing through me and trapped by this, trauma or whatever. And so that's what really got me into spirituality. And that was sort of the only good way to describe it. Now, the question is, can you access this awareness, this spiritual energy, which to me always seemed to be a reward for doing the human work? Can you access that directly, bypassing the human sort of work? And my answer to that is yes and no. Let me explain. First, how do you take the bypass? Well, the fastest way would probably be to sit with a spiritual drug dealer, as I call them. There are certain gurus or teachers, generally in monasteries or ashrams, that have cultivated a certain kind of spiritual energy their entire life. And they're able to, we call it Shakti, or they call it Shakti. And in a gathering, if you sit with them, there's sort of this spiritual crop dusting where they spread this energy. And if you've ever been to one of these, the energy is palpable. If you haven't, or you're skeptical, believe you me, I was too, and there's a lot of things that I don't understand in the world, including Wi-Fi and so forth. But this is very palpable, and it's probably very beneficial too, to get this heavy dose of Shakti. That can be an awakening tool. But as a lifestyle, the people in these ashrams, there's a very dark feel to it as well. It just doesn't feel totally right. And there's extreme hierarchy. There's everybody's sort of in service to this guru and the spiritual energy, and as a consequence, they turn a blind eye to all the abuse, whether it's financial, physical, sexual, etc. Everything you've probably read about. But they usually do have the most insanely delicious vegetarian food. Really inhumane shit goes on at these places because all the people there have been in service to this spiritual energy and tried to avoid their human experiences in the real world. This often culminates in a lot of these monasteries and ashrams. The leaders end up in jail for heinous crimes. There's a huge dark side to this, and this is the most classic example of spiritual bypass, and really one of the only ones that really is obvious and needs to be talked about. This is really the dark side of spirituality, very similar to the dark side in the Force in Star Wars. Now, here's the thing about this kind of spiritual bypass, the energetic kind, I would say. Most people are not really going to encounter this unless you live a certain lifestyle, like in a monastery or a cave for 20 years, and dedicate that time to focusing on in a very specific way. You almost have to be instructed in a particular way to cultivate this. I haven't really seen this with people that just kind of go at it on their own, or just generally meditate. It's a very weird kind of growth. Naturally, the awareness, as we become more aware of it, it illuminates the human stuff that needs to be faced. And we're naturally brought to face that, what we can handle at the time. And when we face that opens up into more awareness. And naturally, awareness and the human grow simultaneously. Even if it doesn't seem like it's happening, the things are getting illuminated. By spending some time in awareness, the body is learning to relax in new ways. The neural pathways are building, and the nervous system is relaxing in a new way that's actually allowing you to channel more energy and feel more deep stuff and more of humanity's deepest stuff, so you can have more awareness. It's infinite as far as I can tell. But this is the natural way that people grow in meditation, and it's generally what is going to happen to you. It's very unlikely, or I should say it's very rare outside of going and living in an ashram or a monastery, that I see somebody that has actually really cultivated this to where it's powerful and a problem in this particular way. Now, I could be wrong, but that's just what I've experienced. It's much more natural for awareness to deepen as the human work deepens. We call it Buddha nature and human nature. They go hand in hand. They grow together. They're the complete package. You can't buy one without the other. In normal meditation practice, awareness develops in the way that is just right for that individual. And sometimes that can mean that the individual needs to spend a lot of time in just pure awareness. Whenever they sit to meditate, they just find a place of awareness, and it seems like there's not a lot of other stuff coming up at the time. That's totally fine. If you find the bypass, take it, because eventually the human stuff that wants to come up will start to come up. It always does. You notice that? Eventually there's going to be something that you can't get over, and it's something small, like a fight with a neighbor or something, and you'll know. It's not you just have to be the slightest bit honest. But it's totally natural to just savor this stillness and peace when it comes. And then from that perspective, the things that need to come up will come up, and in a new way, a profound way. Anger, sadness, fear. But one of the most important instructions for me early on from my first teacher was, whenever this awareness is available, just give your attention to it. A very important instruction, because once this awareness is permanent, then working with human material is so much better, richer, and easier. It's actually worth spending a lot of time in that openness. One of the least helpful pointers I've had was this boogeyman, this fear-mongering of spiritual bypass. Once I heard that term, I was always like, am I spiritual bypass? And I was spending like 0.2 seconds in awareness, whenever I would, start to feel good after I meditated, I'd get up and do something else and get distracted again. So you just have to be careful, because this spiritual bypass can be another way that the mind tries to control the unknown. There's a reason why it was invented by a therapist. Therapists have all these ways of guilt tripping you back into needing their services. And that's not to say we couldn't all use a lot of human work and some good therapy. But I'm just saying that this spiritual bypass, labeling is another hard cutting of the mind, a way to push you down, a way to squander the peace quickly, because the mind has a lot of trouble with the unknown. It will do anything to try to get us out of peace, because peace is very, very threatening to it until it realizes that it's part of that peace. So I might relabel it as spiritual bypass when calm is pathologized. For the most part, human stuff will continue to come up, and it's not like you have to go digging for it. So if you're feeling calm and aware, it will knock on your door. You don't have to go digging deep for something more to work on. That can be a sort of ego trap in and of itself. Now, there's another much more common way that people are talking about spiritual bypass. And generally, they're talking about the way non-dual teachers share this particular vernacular that helps them with awakening. It helps them see who they truly are. And it's actually very natural in the process to get obsessed with this for a period of time. I was too, where you sort of realize, whoa, there is no self. There's no one there doing anything. And you sort of try to use that incredible awakening teaching as a prescription for how to lead your life. And then, the quickest way this should backfire is when you're in relationship, or, you try to explain that there was no one there to do the dishes, or illusion left the toilet seat up, or, oneness forgot our anniversary. It's just silly. And I don't really think, again, that this is rocket science or something that you need to be super afraid of. If you're in denial of how you're using your language or your spiritual positivity or whatever, all it requires is a little bit of honesty to get you right back on course. I read this study from Hertog and Gao that of 126 Christians, 38% said that the devil is the cause of severe depression, and 37% said the devil is the cause of schizophrenia. 31% said that they'd come across religious teaching that spiritualized their mental pain by blaming it on curses passed down through the generations, demons, or transgressions. So the point is that all religious teaching can be used for denial of, whatever's going on really in your life, and stop you from getting the real help you need or working with that material. And I would also add that all of the activities that other people do throughout the day that aren't spiritual, whether they're addicted to something or compulsively on their phone or whatever, we're avoiding our human material all day, every day. So there isn't, if you're using some sort of non-dual language to avoid your stuff, great, you've found another way. But it doesn't take much to see through that, other than to just be like, yeah, this is kind of pointless when it comes to how the human actually interacts. There are multiple layers to this of subtlety. Certainly there can be an over positivity, or like there's these non-dual communities, and I'm not sure how they communicate with each other or get things done, but they try to speak only in this non-dual language, or have this certain kind of positivity, or they praise the light but not the dark somehow. So there can be various subtle ways that people are sort of denying the truth with a group think or belief, or all the plethora of non-dual teachings out there. I just think it's a stage. Like, you go through it. I think a lot of people have had a little awakening, or they had some incredible drug trip or something, and it's gotten them on this path, and it's completely flipped their way of viewing life around backwards, and good for them. They've come up with, new vernacular. They understand all the non-dual teachings in the fundamental sense. And now you're ready to snap out of that and really find what deepens awareness, which is doing the human work. You don't get deep awareness unless you do the human work for the most part. Like I said, it's very difficult to actually like cultivate that and isolate it out. It's not even, that isn't even really like pure awareness. It's like something else. It's like paying attention to the heart chakra and continuing to open that every day in a way that is like very angular. I wish I could tell you exactly how it's done, but I actually don't know. But I know what it feels like, and it's intense and dangerous and imbalanced. And there's another, whereas the transmission from someone who has grown in a balanced way is beautiful, loving, open, all welcoming presence. And you can feel it. It's very palpable. It's very obvious. I mean, I'm going to say something humbling about this human material. I've had many awakenings. I've had all the steps that you'd hear any spiritual teacher talk about. And yet still, I've worked with two well-known teachers for 15 years. And for the last 15 years, I have sat with them every single week for 2 hours. And every single week, there's been human material that's come up. Every single week. So as much as awareness has become the default in me and my teachers, there is still human material that builds up every week that wants to be processed. And sometimes it's extremely difficult to sit with. I don't always look forward to it, but I just do it because I know it's the cleaning. It's like you clean the house once a week, then it stays pretty clean, right? And sometimes there's deep things that probably aren't mine. It's just generally going on in the human consciousness, but that's part of the work now, like that's what I face. And so I don't know. I probably at some point had some ideas about how it was the human work was gonna be finished at some point, and that's the whole catch to this whole thing, is that even if you were able to clear out every cell of this body, there's still what happens week to week, and there's still all of humanity. It's connected to all of humanity. So you're facing all of humanity's issues. It really isn't clear like what stuff is mine versus what's everybody else's. So it's truly infinite. And that's why, with going back, this goes full circle, which is like, gosh, when there's a little awareness there, pure awareness, you feel at peace, just savor that. Just soak it up. Do not label it anything. Do not label it spiritual bypass. The human material will always be there. There will always be more. It's infinite. And it's just like a layer of dressing on top of this beautiful infinite meal that is life, that is awareness, that is our experience. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to be human. It's wonderful to have human, suffering to work through. Okay, I know it's not actually like that. And I know there's a lot of things that, are just extremely unbearable to sit with. I know. Okay, I sat with everything. But it's just, it's also just awesome, like the depth of all of it. So don't let some terminology, including spiritual bypass, get in your way. If you like this video, please do me a favor and leave a comment, subscribe, like. That would really, really help. And thanks for being here.